Hi, I'm Ian, and welcome to Ghosts and Bears, the only podcast with the actual ghost story, with the actual history, and the actual place. On this episode, we're heading downtown Victoria, BC, to one of the oldest, most important buildings down there, the old courthouse built on Bastion Square, where there are a lot of different things going on, and we're going to talk about them all here on this coming episode of Ghosts and Bears. Hello, and thank you for joining us. Once again, Jason's going to be with me in a little bit, but until then, you have me all to yourselves. I know, you're so lucky. It is been a pretty wild time here in British Columbia the last couple of weeks. We've been getting a lot of rain. We've been getting scary amounts of landslides. Anybody who doesn't know, British Columbia is a lot of mountains and a lot of rivers and a lot of lakes. And we are certainly learning the dark side of that now. Land is flooding, lots of livestock killed, people have lost their lives in the mudslides. And of course, all the routes are cut off for shipping and trucking. So there's gas rationing, and yeah, it's like 2020 with extra bonus content. I don't even know. It's not great, I can tell you that much. But you know what? We're surviving. Things are okay, and we are just being really careful about where and how we drive right now. So if we thought we were restricted before, boy, were we wrong. Now we actually are restricted. So there's that. Otherwise, like I said, it's been a pretty standard kind of winter so far. Chilly temperatures, lots of rain, gray clouds, but every once in a while we get a day like today, which was really kind of nice and sunny. So that was pretty great. Other than that, Randy's, still Randy, still contributing as best he can. We're looking at maybe adopting a small dog, but we will see. Don't want to spill too much of that in case it doesn't happen, because that just leads to nothing but heartbreak in our family. So we're not talking a whole lot about that, but we'll see. We may be adding someone to the directorial and content team soon. We went on a ghost walk on Sunday, went and did that, and also been getting ready for the new season of Ghosts and Bears. So I've been working on those sort of details. I'm excited, really excited. Ordered a new microphone for Jason. I had to talk him into it. But I want him to have the same mic as me so that we can actually get good sound quality for both of us. Also with the intent that Jay's going to be on more. He's really enjoying it, which I think is a bit of a surprise to him. So, I think we're going to try and get him on some more and deliberately schedule recording when he can do it and when he's around, and maybe set a set night rather than, oh, hey, tonight's free, let's put the podcast together. I mean, I do all the prep work ahead of time, but the actual sitting down and recording, that sometimes doesn't always happen on a regular basis. We're also due to do some video stuff with Chris and Alex coming up. We talked about doing a Christmas video, a lot like we did for the Halloween video. But as I mentioned on the last episode, upon reflection, watching two people literally read a document is not that exciting. So I think we're going to give that one a pass and maybe save it for another adventure. Maybe we can do it on location or something. We can shoot a video of it. That would be very cool. But yeah, right now, I don't think that's going to happen. We are going to do a bit of a Christmas photo shoot, though, so that'll be fun. I even bought an outfit for Randy, which he's going to hate. And, I mean, just if you get to dress animals up in people clothes, I mean, it's a day well spent as far as I'm concerned. I mean, one of my favorite forms of art is formally dressed animals in these classical looking paintings. I don't know. I think it's funny. And so we're looking forward to that. We have been off to see a couple movies lately, so we'll talk about that when Jay's here. Really enjoyed those. And I had some cooking adventures, which was super fun. I've never made cornbread before. I know all our southern listeners are just going, what? But I haven't. It's not a big thing up here. So I researched. I did my research work, and I have a cast iron frying pan, and I preheated the cast iron frying pan, and I made the dry mix and the wet mix, and then I brought the two together and poured it into my preheated cast iron pan, and I have to say it was amazing. We all loved the cornbread and really enjoyed it. But the next morning, I looked at it and I'm like, great, there's like, half a pan left. Nobody wants cold cornbread. Maybe you do. I'm not judging. But in our family, we didn't. So I thought, what can I do with it? So I remembered when I was a kid, my mom at Christmas time would make this very non-misogynistic named dish called Wife Saver. Oh Lord, dark times. And it was like, you throw in bread and eggs and cheese and then you just bake it. And you could do it the night before. I guess that's why it was saving you as a wife. Maybe it was a salvation thing. I don't know. We were a very confused religious household. So that came to mind and I thought, I wonder. So I looked it up and sure enough, there's cornbread casserole kind of recipes. So I just adapted it. I threw in some cheddar and some smoked Gouda, mixed it all up, and it was so good. I even served it with poached eggs on top, runny poached eggs. So they'd make kind of a sauce because I'm fancy like that. And it went really, really well. So I was happy. I don't always feel inspired, but when I do, watch out. Like last night, I made a cheese sauce from scratch for our broccoli and cauliflower, and I made extra because look at me planning ahead. I figured I'd make some mac and cheese later on in the week, so I already have the sauce prepared. I just got to boil up the pasta and mix it all together and bake it with some cheese on top. Gonna be amazing. So that's been my culinary adventures. I wish I could say I'm consistent, like, oh, I whip out these dishes every night, or no, it's like maybe once every 2 weeks. Otherwise I'm pulling crap out of the freezer going, what can I do with this? So we also get one of those meal kit things. We get 2 of those a week, and I usually improvise a bit with those. Sometimes the recipe's great and it's super easy, but other times I'm like, I don't want to mince all that garlic. So I just find new ways to use them and do exciting things with them and maybe adapt how it's cooked. And I hate making lots of dishes when I'm cooking because I'm the one who has to clean them up. So as you can imagine, the less the better. So a lot of times I'll be like, oh, it's a wok recipe now. Ta-da! So I do that quite a bit. Anyway, enough talking about food and cornbread and things of that nature. Let's instead talk about the history of this really cool building we have in downtown Victoria. I have an excerpt from bastionsquare.ca, and this is Bastion Square is really where old Fort Victoria was, and where we started putting all our important buildings. The courthouse, as we will learn, was built over top of something else. So here is what we're going to hear about. In 1887, the Chief Commission of Lands and Works authorized the erection of a new courthouse. A brick building on a stone foundation on the site of the old police barracks and jail. The design was supposedly based on a court building in the architect's native city of Munich. Local tradition has it that this was the first building in Victoria to make extensive use of reinforced concrete. The brick facing was stuccoed and rendered to resemble the grouting of huge granite blocks. The building was completed in 1889 at a total cost of $35,000, which is pretty good. In its day, the courthouse presented an impressive spectacle towering over the other buildings at like 4 stories in the immediate area and looking out over the harbor. The elevator remains a high point of the interior and is the oldest lift in BC still in operation. During the 1900 remodeling, many of the windows were filled in. The main arches of the east portico were converted into windows, and the interior space was redefined as an office. The courthouse's last hearing was held in February in 1962, just before the courts moved to the new buildings on Courtney Street. You can imagine what those look like being built and designed in the 60s. Ugly. During 1963 to 1964, the old courthouse served as a temporary hall. In 1965, the Maritime Museum was relocated there, and they stayed there until 2014, and then things went a little sideways for the old building. It was built by a man named Hermann Otto Teiderman, and he was the man who was reputed to be from Munich and had sort of taken this design from there. It is a National Historic Site in Canada. It was designated that in 1981. And it is a really impressive building. It is falling into some disrepair, however, now. In 2014, the building was reviewed seismically, as most buildings are here in Victoria and indeed in British Columbia. The old buildings were checked to make sure they would be okay if there was an earthquake. And this building was found to not only not be okay, but also to be structurally pulling itself apart. Kind of a big deal. So they basically condemned the building and said it was unfit for your human habitation. They are going to have to fix it. Because it is a National Historic Site, but they're not agreeing on who's going to pay for that. There's a few reasons for that. One is because if you say you wanted to open a business in this building, you would have to pay for all the extensive structural repairs, which will probably be in the millions, not to mention any renovation on top of that you wanted to do, which you would have to get through the National Historic Landmark Commission and all that. So you wouldn't just be able to go in and go, oh, we're going chrome. No, that's not going to happen. And even after all of that, you would then only own kind of a lease. You would never get the money back from that building because you will never own the building. So there's not very many people anxious to invest in something like that. And that's a problem. That's why this poor building, since 2014, has sat vacant. Because it's just not, in terms of an investment, it's just not a very good investment. Historically, though, I mean, it's a huge deal because it was our very first Supreme Court in this province. And it was kind of the headquarters. All the buildings around it, which had been warehouses or hotels or brothels, were quickly being converted into office space because, of course, the landlords had visions of lawyers, popping up everywhere, and they were planning on making law offices around it. And there are still some today, but not like there were. So that plan didn't work out so hot. But it was a really big deal, and the Maritime Museum did exist there for 49 years and made a huge mark. Most modern day Victorians will remember the Maritime Museum being there, which was awesome. It was a great building to go to. It was wonderful to walk through. It had a very weird feeling to it, which of course I didn't know when I went there many, many years ago to check out the museum because I'm nerdy that way. And it wasn't until I started doing the ghost walks, it was sort of like it is one of our most famous haunted buildings. And I would go as far to say as it is also, if not the most, at least in the top 3 haunted buildings in Victoria. We're going to hear about that in the story time. But keep in mind, the story time was, again, one I recorded doing a ghost walk, so you're going to hear other noises in there. And I do have some stories to follow up with, because when we do the ghost walks, you've got to sort of keep it to a time. But I do have some extra stories for you after the end of the formal story time, which I will add in there, and I hope you will enjoy. Now we are off to downtown Victoria. If you're thinking of going there right now at this time of night, it's going to be dark, it's going to be dim, it's going to be a little spooky. And because it's not just that one building, there's buildings all around it, and they all have their own ghost things going on. We use a building right next door called Burns House, and the room we have in there has such a presence. I don't know if I've ever talked about it before, but it's not one I take lightly. I have gone in there from day one, and said, nope, I don't want to bother you. I don't want anything to do with you. You have nothing to prove. This is your spot, not mine. I don't want to mess with you. Other guides have gone in there like, come on, show yourself, prove you're really here. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they have often paid the price or achieved success, I suppose, depending on their outcome. Not for me. I consider that space absolutely 100% inhabited by something that very much feels ownership over it. And one of the theories of that is when they dug up the alleyways behind Burns' house to check the foundation in the 1980s, they found the skeletons of 4 European women, which had no business being there. Burns' house was most likely used as a brothel. And the feeling is that the spirit that is in that room that we use may have been the enforcer, the bouncer kind of thing. And he may have had something to do with putting those women there in one way or another. Either way, he still hangs around. He likes to touch the hair of long-haired women. Women have kind of felt that, and sometimes he'll even follow them home, which is super creepy, but it's on brand. So yeah, I don't mess with him. I give him a wide berth, and now he knows my energy, I think, and he leaves me alone. But the first couple of years, I could not get in and out of there quick enough. Now I can go in there and kind of sit with my back up against a wall, and I'm and I don't feel completely freaked out, but I'm much happier if someone's in there with me. Anyway, that's just one of the buildings. All the buildings around there have ghostly things going on. It really is kind of the epicenter. But for now, we're off to downtown Victoria, and we're going to hear about the Supreme Court of British Columbia and what's still going on there today. So here we are. This is the Bastion Square, and this building behind me is probably the most haunted building we have. There's some good reasons for that. Originally what was here was the prison for Fort Victoria. And when the prison was here, this was also the site of the public hangings. You could pay extra money and stand on the roof of the Boomerang Saloon that was where the parking garage is now. You could stand on that roof and have a better view of the hangings that were going on here. What would generally happen is the person would be brought out from the prison. It would be a Saturday morning, and they would then be led to the gallows. The priest would say the prayers, and as he did, the crowd would kind of quieten down, not because of any great respect for religion, but they knew that at some point during the Lord's Prayer, that was when the hangman would pull the lever and the trapdoor would drop, and the man would drop through with the rope around his neck. So they were all waiting for this moment. There was a lot to do, right? This was kind of the social activity for the month. When this poor condemned man had finally breathed his last, if it had gone well, he was dead within 3 to 4 minutes. And when he'd breathed his last, they would call for the doctor to come. He would agree that indeed this man was deceased, and then they would cut him down. And that is when the judge would step forward over the body and address the crowd that had come for the hanging. He would say very loudly, "Who claims this body?" Now, most of these men were here for the gold rush. They didn't come with family. They didn't come with friends. They came on their own. And if they had made any friends, they probably weren't going to be the kind of friends looking to pay for a condemned criminal's funeral. He'd say it again. Who claims this body? It was the 1800s. You wanted to have a good Christian burial because who knew what would happen to your soul if you didn't get one? He'd say it one last time. Who claims this body? If no one stepped up, he would signal to the guards to come. They would take the body out. They would dig a hole in the exercise yard. They would throw the body in, cover him up, and that was it. When they decided that the prison was too small, they simply knocked it down, and they began building the much larger Supreme Court of British Columbia. And when they were doing this, they didn't take the time to dig everybody up. They simply pushed them into the foundations of the new, much larger building. Now, knowing this,
And knowing that at least 2 of the 11 men who ended up buried here were totally innocent of their crimes. One was a First Nations man. His name was Malache. His only crime was stopping some European men from raping his wife, but they decided to make an example out of him, and they put on a show trial, lasted less than 15 minutes. They didn't bring an interpreter. Poor Malache had no idea what was happening until the morning when he was let out. He saw the crowd, he saw the scaffold, and he started to cry. He was only 18 years old. He was one of the men who ended up buried in the exercise yard and whose bones became part of this new building. This new building was the Supreme Court for many years, and then in our more recent history, it became the Maritime Museum. And a few of our guides were educators here at the museum. They used to get phone calls on a weekly basis from paranormal groups across North America wanting to spend the night in this building because it was just so profoundly haunted. You would not leave without some really great evidence. All parts of the museum were haunted, but it seemed that a lot of the energy was concentrated on the top floor. And that's where the courtroom of Judge Matthew Bailey Begbie was. He was also known as the hanging judge, so you can kind of figure out his reputation. The judge was a very strict man. He took his job very seriously, and they preserved his courtroom up there. So, of course, schools would come and do school trips to learn about BC history, and they would go up to the courtroom. And when they did, every single time, one of the teachers or one of the kids or one of the parents would stop at the doors and say, "Ooh, we are not supposed to go in there." They would have a very strong feeling. They would have families go through in the summer, touring through. And if they were families with little kids and they went through the courtroom, when they came down and someone would say, "Oh, how did you enjoy your visit?" They would often say, "Well, we really liked it, but the actor in the big black robe in the courtroom, he just sort of stared at us in a mean way. He didn't say anything. That was weird." And that's when they'd say, "Actually, there's no staff members over the first floor." And the last thing they did, and they changed this after this happened, they were having sleepovers in the courtroom. Girl Guides, Boy Scouts, that kind of thing. They got a group of Boy Scouts to finally settle down, and these guys were supposed to go to sleep, and they finally got them to quit messing around. They got them quiet, and just as they were about to drift off, one of them had the end of his sleeping bag grabbed, pulled off of him, and a loud voice said, "Get out." So people assumed the judge must have hated kids, but he didn't. He actually cared about children a lot, but he never allowed children in his courtroom because he didn't want them to see the terrible things that adults did to each other. So people were feeling the right feelings, just not for the right reasons. There's a birdcage-like elevator in here. It's very small. It has a red velvet bench, and it was put in for a judge whose doctor had told him, "You're too fat. Don't use the stairs. They'll kill you," which is kind of the opposite of what we'd say now. And this judge died before he ever got to use it. Well, the elevator's still there, and so the guides who worked here took the accreditation to be manual lift operators so they could take kids for rides in this little elevator. But a lot of times, kids would run up to the elevator and go, "Oh, never mind." And then if pressed, some of them would say, "Well, the big man is already in there. He's taking up all the room." So this judge may not have gotten to go in it while he was alive, but he was certainly going to make up for it when he was dead. They had a hard time keeping volunteers in the gift shop. They would have people in there. One memorable time, they had a retired submarine captain, a man used to stress, a man used to, high tense situations. He started his first shift in the gift shop, and the coordinator volunteers came to check on him about halfway through, and he was gone. So she phoned his house, no answer. She phoned his house, no answer. Finally, after 3 days, the wife answered the phone, and she was kind of snarky. And she said, "I just wanted to check on him. Is he okay? We haven't heard anything. Is he coming back?" "No, he's not coming back. And you could have warned him. You could have warned him. The poor man." Well, apparently what had happened, 2 things. The calculator did a 180 on the desk by itself. And then one of the little sailor hats they used to sell picked up off the shelf, went to the middle of the floor and dropped. And that the man said, "Yep, see ya, I'm out." He never came back. So this was the real deal. The woman in charge of unlocking and locking the building up was so used to hearing several male voices on the second floor when she would come in and unlock the building in the morning that she used to say good morning and good night when she would leave. One night she was about to leave. It was late. There'd been an event here. She put the key in the door and she said good night. And a man's voice right in the lobby with her said, "Good night." I'm not sure. Would I come back? I'd have to think about that one. So this building, profoundly haunted, but it makes sense, right? It makes sense why, when you think of all of the death and the disrespect that was shown to the men who ended up buried here. They have pretty much decided they have to redo this building. It has been condemned. It has been for the last 7 years. It's physically pulling itself apart. And wherever you live, wherever you are, if you want to find a haunted place, look for one of three places: a hospital, a hotel, or a theater. And guess what they want to turn this into? A performing arts center. That's going to be amazing. And there's going to be some great stories coming out of here.
As promised, there are some more stories to tell about the wonderful Supreme Court of British Columbia. When the surveyors were going through the building, because of course they'd been asked to do so to check out the building, how's it built, how's it holding up, all those good things, there was a great story about one of the surveyors walking through. And he went into the first room with the guide because she was there to help him, like, oh, this wall attaches here, this is what this is about, kind of thing. And he walked up to one of the walls and he knocked on it and he said, oh, is this wood? He knocked twice. He did this. And she said, oh, that's actually a cupboard back there. I believe, the wall's there as well. Okay, he said. He wrote it down, was filling out his forms. He walked into the next room. The guide went before him. The minute he stepped over the threshold, they walked into the room, and from one of the walls they heard. And he looked at her and she looked at him, and he quickly did, what he had to do, the, stone wall, brick wall, concrete wall, whatever. And then they went into the next room, and as soon as he walked across the threshold of the room, and at that point he turned to her and he closed his binder and he said, okay, so I'm done for today. Someone else will be here tomorrow to follow up. I'm not coming back. And he left. He didn't acknowledge it. He didn't talk about it. He just left. He couldn't handle it. So these were the kinds of things that were happening quite often in this building. They would also have problems. I talked a little bit about the gift shop, but they also had a beautiful blown glass model of a boat in the gift shop. And one day, one of the volunteers heard a clink, and she looked up. And as she looked up, she watched the ship. It almost looked like it was sailing off the shelf because it came up. And then it went out a little ways and it sort of bobbed up and down a bit, and then it just dropped to the floor. And of course it shattered. So that was another one of those, oh, you'll never believe what happened today kind of things. They get false alarms in that building all the time. Of course, they still have to have security monitoring the place, even though it's all locked up. But the alarms go off in there all the time, and there's literally nobody in there. You can walk past at different times of the night. Different lights are on different floors, different rooms. And again, it's pretty much all boarded up. So there's not a lot going on. They also had a pretty famous time. I talked about the hangings. And hangings would always take place early on a Saturday morning. That was always the time that they occurred. And so people they knew when to gather if there was going to be a hanging. And this had a bit of an echo in the museum because the staff all knew that on Saturday morning, when you walked through the door of the museum, you would have to get the kettle boiling for tea and make sure there were cookies and get the camp bed ready in the nurse's room. Because every single Saturday morning, someone would get pushed or punched or pinched or kicked or suffer some sort of shock that was violent enough that would require them to be calmed down and soothed and maybe rest and certainly have a strong cup of tea because, if you're at all aware of how the British work, a strong cup of tea is pretty much the only thing in the first aid kit. So this is what they just got used to, and it wasn't even talked about. It was just, oh, I'll do the tea this morning. And that meant you were in charge of whoever it was, of the visitors who got hurt first. So it was just kind of a thing that you knew. That being said, it didn't stop them from other times going after people. And sometimes people would feel themselves pushed on the stairs, or they're always saying, please use the handrail. Yeah, it wasn't just for your safety of not slipping. It was also because sometimes people would get a good shove. Considering what kind of people were going through that building, who ended up in there, I talked about how they buried the men who weren't claimed, but they were also burying other people back there. If you died in prison, we talked about Limey on one of the very first episodes of this podcast. Limey would have gotten buried in the exercise yard. If you died of an illness while in jail, which I can't imagine that happening, the same thing. You would be buried in the exercise yard. If you died of sickness or maybe self-harm in the jail, you would be buried in the exercise yard. So there were a number of former customers of the legal system, clients, I guess you could call them, who ended up, their final time was spent in that exercise yard. So if you want a recipe for a haunted building, pushing their bodies into the foundation of the new, much larger building that is now to be used for judging you, I really can't think of anything better if you want to get a haunted building. And that's exactly what happened. So it's not a huge shock that this building is so profoundly haunted, given what it was for, the kinds of energy released in that building while it was being used, and the sad ends that many people, men, ended up meeting because of that building and close to that building. And in the end, their pathetic burial plots would have been left as well, just getting completely, literally built over. So it's a commentary on how we valued life in the gold rush, which wasn't very high, and how we treated those who refused to go along with society's rules. They were punished swiftly. People would bring their kids to the hangings. You wanted your kids to see, hey, this is what happens if you decide to step outside the law. So it was pretty serious. That is our story of the Courthouse. It is certainly one of my favorites. We end all of our Bastion Square tours there and talk about the Courthouse quite a bit. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And Jason's going to be joining us momentarily, and we are going to be talking about what's coming up, what we've been up to, and also what you can look for. Maybe some more little hints, I don't know, about season 2. And we will be right back. As promised, I have returned with Jason, who won't stop doing weird things to the mic.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm having fun with my mic.
Yeah, well, don't have too much fun with it.
Well, I'm not doing anything. I was just testing this thing.
I saw you licking the sneeze cover thing.
I'm not licking this thing. What are you talking about? No, I was just trying out this weird thing.
Okay. Well, what I thought we would talk about is exciting things that happened to us this week.
Yes.
Our bathroom's almost done.
Oh yeah, the bathroom has been a work in progress.
It has, and
months.
our plumber listens to the podcast, so we're grateful to him for all this hard work and overcoming all the adversity he's had to overcome.
That's right.
Very excited to have a shower in there and a toilet and a sink.
Yeah.
But the funniest thing is, to make it work, he had to put in this industrial grinder pump thing because it goes up and over the wall and then down into the
pump. Yeah.
So it's every time you flush the toilet, it sounds like we're making juice or something.
It's a little different.
So you go flush, and it goes.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It basically vibrates the hose.
You know what? I was in here when it went off the other day, and you didn't actually really hear it. So
no,
it's not as bad as we think it is, but it is pretty funny. The first time it went off, I'm like, uh-oh. Is that supposed to happen?
It's called a macerator, technically.
There you go.
Macerator.
Macerator. Yeah, but it's pretty funny.
It macerates.
It does. It absolutely does.
You say we can throw a tree trunk down there.
I don't-
We'll deal with it.
I don't think we're planning on that though.
No.
I mean, just hauling it up the stairs would be a pain.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, other than that, we've been dealing with the gas shortages
Yes.
and the flooding and the
Yes.
roads washing away.
And we want to say stay safe to everyone. Yeah, there's
Absolutely.
been all sorts of things happening.
Pretty
in British
scary.
Columbia.
Yeah, pretty scary. And we of course buried our sorrows by watching movies.
Yeah, we watched
We-
some good ones.
We watched, first of all, I know people have been saying, talking smack about, what's it called? The Red Ticket or Red Line or Red, the one we watched with The Rock and Ryan Reynolds and Gal Gadot on Netflix. Red,
Oh, I don't remember that.
Red
movie.
something.
Yeah, I'm not.
Everyone's apparently watching it right now. Anyway,
Yeah,
I liked it.
yeah, it was a bit of fun.
I think Ryan Reynolds is hilarious,
Yes.
and I thought the movie was really funny.
Yeah, it was funny.
And I heard someone say, or I read it somewhere, they said, if you made a computer watch endless amounts of adventure action movies and then told it to produce a script using AI, that is the script that would come out. But I'm like, well, it works.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. It was fun to watch.
It was fun. And then we watched another one,
Yes, the new Ghostbusters,
which is a movie
Afterlife.
close to both our hearts.
Yeah, it was good fun. And ironically enough, we just watched the other one just before Halloween. So
Yeah,
that
it was
good.
right around Halloween we watched it, and it was so great to watch it again. I'd
Yeah,
forgotten
and
how good it was.
I don't want to give any spoilers, but it is so much fun.
It is such a good movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't try to do anything crazy. It tells a really great story, great characters in it.
Yes.
I
and
thought it was really good.
May Harold rest in peace.
That's right. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
very
it was-
good movie.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I really loved it.
I'm really glad we went. I saw that it had come out on the Friday, and it was the Saturday, and I'm like, we gotta go to this movie.
Oh, yeah, that's
So-
right.
Jason bought tickets immediately.
Yeah, my friend Scott just went and saw it yesterday.
Oh, did he like it?
Yes, he did like it a lot.
Well, I know Greg, who listens to our podcast in San Diego, he was actually, I read his status, and then that's when I went, oh, right, that movie's coming out,
Yeah,
and
that's
it was
right.
out, and so that's why we went and saw it. So thanks, Greg.
Yes, thank you, Greg.
I'm glad he reminded me. And then we just saw one last night on the Disney Channel.
Yes.
What was that
I
one
don't
called?
remember that one either.
The 10 Rings? 10 Rings?
10 Rings or something, yes.
Isn't it in like a Marvel movie? I'm so bad with this
I believe
stuff.
so, but it was fun.
It was
fun.
so good. Part of the reason I loved it was Aquafina,
Oh, yeah.
who
she's
I
fun.
think is so funny.
Yes.
And I had seen her on a couple things, but then she was really good in Crazy Rich Asians.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so great. Like you keep cocktail dresses in your trunk. Of course I do. I'm not an animal.
That's right. That's a great line.
And she was also like really awesome in this movie too.
That's
so
right. Yeah, no, they were good movies.
they were good. Yeah.
You know, it helps us to stay home. Or, well, of course we had to go see Ghostbusters. But yeah, for the most part, we've been trying to, well, I work from home lately, but
Yeah, and just save gas because
Yeah, save
gas is
gas.
rationed here right now.
Yeah, well,
So we're just trying to be smart about it.
I read
and-
some interesting economics articles on it, and some econ professors think it was a wise idea to ration gas, and some say no, let the free market economy flow, and I say no, I don't think so, because I don't, I love economics personally. Ian knows this. I think it's a bad idea. I'm glad they ration the gas, because the last thing we need is expectations of the future, having a price set higher.
Right.
And, say for example it hits $1.99
Right.
a liter.
Right.
That won't be okay in a year.
No.
That's substantially more than what we're paying right now.
Well, and we saw, like, you saw that older lady who, that guy was screaming at her at the gas station. 'cause she
Yeah,
couldn't-
yeah.
Like, and that's just going to get worse if we don't ration it, I think.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I didn't like seeing that.
No.
She had every right to be there just as much as everyone else. And
Yeah.
it's, for the viewers listening, there was a lineup on the one side of the pumps, and this gas station had two entries, and I was on the other entry, and the guy started yelling at the poor old lady, and she just looked in distress. So I got out of my car and said a few things, and I wasn't rude, but I basically politely said, we're all in the same boat. There are two entrances to this gas station, and we were patiently waiting on this side. So some people clapped at me because of that, because I could see she was getting upset and really distraught.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, whenever I know with COVID and people were starting panic buying, and they've done that here again.
Yes,
people have gone into grocery stores and cleaned out grocery stores yet again. But it's the older people and the vulnerable people who end up paying for it the most, because they can't fight it. And it's the people who are waiting for their check to come in before they can buy groceries. What's left for them?
That's right.
If we all just go in there and hoard everything up, what's left for those people? So
we all need to cooperate.
Yeah. Like you say, we're all in the same boat, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So the irony is now the gas is rationed. There's no ridiculous lineups at all. To the viewers listening, there were pumps all over this town, everywhere out, completely out, because of this panic buying.
Well, a lot of times they were selling premium gas for regular prices.
That's right. Yeah.
They had nothing else to sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty wild.
Bizarre.
All right. Well, we have come to the end of our usual chatter and episode.
Thank you for listening.
I hope you enjoyed the stories about the wonderful Courthouse, the Supreme Court of British Columbia, and Bastion Square, and all those good things. And we will have another episode coming up, and then we will have, I believe, we've got one episode after this, and then we have our Christmas episode, and then we're taking our little break before season 2 starts.
Yeah. That'll be fun. Yes.
I've been working hard on season 2.
January.
Yeah,
that's right. We have.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna have some really good stuff coming out then. We are going to just say our thank yous and move on.
That's right.
So thanks again for joining us. And remember, no matter where you are, have a fantastic week, day, or wherever else you're heading off to. I hope it's amazing. And next time you're wandering around, remember, we've got the actual ghost stories with the actual history in the actual place. And hopefully one day soon, that place will be with you. Take care. Bye.